Mindset Shift Audiobooks. Wealth is an identity before it is an outcome. Introduction. There's a moment that happens before the money arrives, before the business scales, before the opportunities multiply. It's quiet, private, almost invisible to anyone watching from the outside. It's the moment you stop performing wealth and start embodying it. Most people never reach this moment because they're too busy chasing the outcome. They're optimizing their LinkedIn profile, studying someone else's framework, refreshing their bank account to see if the universe has finally noticed their effort. They're waiting for external validation to confirm that they've made it. But wealth doesn't work that way. Wealth is not a reward for good behavior. It's not a prize you win after suffering long enough. It's not something that happens to you when you finally crack the code or find the right mentor or post the perfect piece of content. Wealth is an identity, and identity precedes outcome every single time. This is the part most people skip. They want the result without the reconfiguration. They want the income without the internal shift. They think wealth is about strategies and systems, and it is, eventually. But before the strategies work, before the systems scale, there has to be a person capable of holding it all. That person is not who you are right now. That person is who you're becoming, and the becoming happens in the gap between where you are and where you're going, the gap between the decision and the evidence, the gap between the identity you're building and the reality you're still living in. Most people collapse in the gap. They give up because the external world hasn't caught up to the internal shift yet. They go back to the old identity because at least it's familiar, at least it's safe, at least people understand it. But you can't build a new life with an old identity. You can't generate wealth from a scarcity-based sense of self. You can't step into abundance while still operating from lack. This audiobook is about the reconfiguration that happens before the results show up. It's about the identity work that makes the outcome inevitable. It's about understanding that wealth isn't something you chase, it's something you become. We're going to explore what it means to shift your identity at the deepest level. Not through affirmations or vision boards, but through pattern recognition, belief restructuring, and behavioral recalibration. We're going to look at why most people stay stuck in the same financial reality year after year, even when they're working harder than ever. And we're going to map out the exact internal shifts that precede every external breakthrough. This is not a strategy guide. This is an identity manual. Welcome to Mindset Shift Audiobooks, a place for becoming. Here you'll find the structure to build more abundance, more success, more life lived on your terms. If this resonates, subscribe for daily content. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Identity Outcome Gap. Every outcome you've ever experienced has been preceded by an identity. Not a goal, not a plan, an identity. The person who earns 6 figures has a 6-figure identity. The person who builds a successful business has a builder identity. The person who attracts high-quality opportunities has an identity that magnetizes quality. And the person who stays stuck, despite all the effort, all the learning, all the trying, has an identity that's incompatible with the outcome they say they want. This is the identity outcome gap. and it's the single most important concept you need to understand if you want to create lasting wealth. Here's how it works. Your identity is made up of beliefs, behaviors, and patterns that have been reinforced over time. Some of these were inherited, some were learned, some were adopted as survival mechanisms in environments that no longer exist. But they're running in the background of your lifelike code, and that code determines what you see, what you believe is possible, what risks you take, what opportunities you notice, and what results you create. If your identity is rooted in scarcity, you will create scarcity outcomes. If your identity is rooted in instability, you will create unstable results. If your identity is rooted in smallness, you will shrink every opportunity that comes your way. This is not a character flaw. It's not a lack of ambition or intelligence or work ethic. It's simply a mismatch between who you are and what you're trying to build. And the gap between the two creates friction, cognitive dissonance, self-sabotage, the feeling that you're working so hard, but nothing is changing. Most people try to close the gap by working harder. They add more tactics, more content, more networking, more courses. They think the problem is external, that they haven't found the right strategy yet. But the problem is internal. The identity hasn't shifted. And until it does, every strategy will feel like pushing a boulder uphill because you're trying to create an outcome that your identity doesn't believe in yet. Here's the truth. Wealth is not created by doing more. It's created by becoming different. Think about the last time you tried to make a big change in your life. Maybe you tried to start a business. Maybe you tried to increase your prices. Maybe you tried to show up more visibly. What happened? If you're like most people, you hit resistance, not external resistance, internal resistance. A voice in your head that said, "Who do you think you are?" A feeling in your body that said, "This isn't safe." A pattern of behavior that pulled you back to what was familiar. That's the identity outcome gap. Your current identity trying to protect you from the discomfort of change, and it will win every time unless you do the deeper work. The deeper work is not about motivation. It's not about mindset. It's about rewiring the identity itself. It's about catching the moment when you shrink, when you undercharge, when you over-deliver to people who undervalue you, when you say yes when you mean no, when you dim your expertise to make others comfortable, when you play small to avoid judgment. Those moments are not accidents. They're identity-driven behaviors, and they will keep recreating the same outcomes until you interrupt the pattern. Wealth is not built by people who work the hardest. It's built by people who have an identity that allows them to receive it, hold it, and expand it. So the question is not, what do I need to do to make more money? The question is, who do I need to become to be someone for whom wealth is natural? That's where the real work begins. Chapter 2. The Scarcity Identity. Scarcity is not just a mindset. It's an identity, and it runs deeper than you think. You can have abundance affirmations on your mirror and still operate from scarcity. You can visualize wealth and still make scarcity-based decisions. You can say you're ready for more and still behave like someone who believes there will never be enough. Because scarcity is not about what you think, it's about what you believe at the level of identity. And if you grew up in scarcity, if you watched your parents stress about money, If you learn that resources are limited and you have to fight for your share, if you absorb the belief that wanting more makes you greedy or selfish or ungrateful, then scarcity is wired into your nervous system. It's not a thought you can override with positive thinking. It's a pattern you have to dismantle. Here's what scarcity identity looks like in practice. You undercharge because you're afraid people won't pay. You over-deliver because you're afraid people will ask for refunds. You say yes to opportunities that drain you because you're afraid to say no to money. You hoard time, energy, and resources because you're afraid you won't have enough later. You operate from a belief that there is a finite amount of success, and if someone else wins, there's less for you. You compare yourself to others and feel behind. You celebrate other people's wins, but secretly wonder why it's not happening for you. You work harder than everyone around you, but you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're always bracing for loss. You're always preparing for the moment it all falls apart. That's scarcity identity. And it doesn't matter how much money you make. If the identity is still rooted in scarcity, you will recreate scarcity conditions. You'll make more and spend more. You'll earn more and stress more. You'll hit income goals and immediately move the goalpost. Because scarcity identity is not about the amount. It's about the relationship. And the relationship is fear-based. Fear that it won't last. Fear that you're not good enough. Fear that you'll be exposed as a fraud. Fear that you'll lose everything and end up back where you started. This fear drives every decision, and every decision reinforces the scarcity. So how do you break the cycle? First, you have to recognize it. You have to see the pattern clearly. You have to catch yourself in the act of scarcity-driven behavior and name it. I'm undercharging because I don't believe I'm worth more. I'm over-delivering because I don't trust that I'm enough. I'm saying yes to this opportunity because I'm afraid to say no to money. You don't judge it. You don't shame yourself for it. You just see it. Second, you have to interrupt it. You have to make a different choice in the moment when the scarcity pattern shows up. The client asks for a discount. Instead of saying yes immediately, you pause. You feel the discomfort. You say, my pricing reflects the value of this work. The opportunity comes in that doesn't align with your vision. Instead of saying yes because it's money, you pause. You feel the fear. You say, this isn't the right fit for me right now. You're tempted to compare yourself to someone further ahead. Instead of spiraling, you pause. You feel the inadequacy. You redirect your focus back to your own path. Every time you interrupt the scarcity pattern, you weaken it. Every time you make a choice from abundance, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's scary, even when there's no evidence yet, you strengthen the new identity. And over time, the new identity becomes the default. But here's the part most people don't understand. The shift doesn't happen because you finally have enough money. The shift happens because you decide to operate as if you already do. You stop making decisions from fear. You stop shrinking to fit other people's budgets. You stop apologizing for your prices. You stop overcompensating for your perceived lack of credibility. You start making decisions from sufficiency, from trust, from the belief that there is enough, you are enough, and more is coming. That's the abundance identity, and it precedes the abundance outcome every single time. Chapter 3. The wealth identity in practice. Let's talk about what a wealth identity actually looks like in practice, because this is not theoretical, this is behavioral. A person with a wealth identity does not wait for permission to charge what they're worth. They don't need external validation to know their value. They don't look around to see what everyone else is charging and price themselves in the middle to be safe. They decide what their work is worth, and they hold that line. A person with a wealth identity does not over-deliver to compensate for imposter syndrome. They deliver exactly what was promised, nothing more, nothing less. They trust that what they agreed to provide is enough. A person with a wealth identity does not chase every opportunity. They evaluate opportunities based on alignment, not desperation. They say no to money that comes with strings attached. They walk away from clients who don't respect their boundaries. A person with a wealth identity does not hoard resources. They invest in themselves. They pay for support. They buy back their time. They understand that money is a tool, not a security blanket. A person with a wealth identity does not collapse when things don't go according to plan. They don't spiral into scarcity when a client leaves or a launch underperforms. They stay grounded in the knowing that one setback does not define the trajectory. A person with a wealth identity does not perform certainty. They don't pretend to have it all figured out. They're comfortable with uncertainty because they trust their ability to navigate it. And here's the key. None of this requires you to already have wealth. You don't need a certain income level to operate this way. You don't need a proven track record. You don't need social proof. You just need to decide that this is who you are now. Let me give you an example. Two people launch the same offer at the same price point, same niche, same audience size, same level of visibility. One person prices it at £200 because that feels safe, because they're worried no one will buy if it's higher, because they don't want to seem greedy or out of touch. The other person prices it at £2,000, not because they have more experience, not because they have a bigger audience, but because they've decided that their work is worth that. And they're willing to hold the boundary even if it means fewer people say yes. The first person gets 20 buyers. They make £4,000. They feel validated because people bought. But they also feel resentful because they worked for pennies. And they've reinforced a scarcity identity, the belief that they have to stay small to be accepted. The second person gets 2 buyers. They make £4,000. They feel aligned because the people who said yes were the right people. And they've reinforced a wealth identity, the belief that they don't have to compromise their value to make money. Same revenue, completely different identity reinforcement. And over time, the second person will scale because they're operating from sufficiency, not scarcity, because they're attracting buyers who value transformation, not bargain hunters, because they're building a business that doesn't require them to burn out to break even. The first person will stay stuck because every sale reinforces the belief that they have to undercharge to survive. And that belief will keep them undercharging forever. This is what identity-driven wealth looks like. It's not about the tactics. It's about the person executing the tactics. You can have the best offer in the world, but if your identity is rooted in scarcity, you'll sabotage it, you'll underprice it, you'll over-deliver until you resent it, You'll give discounts to people who don't value it. But if your identity is rooted in wealth, even a basic offer will perform because you'll hold the boundary, you'll trust the value, you'll attract people who are ready to invest. The outcome is always a reflection of the identity. So if you want to build wealth, stop focusing on the strategies. Start focusing on the identity. Ask yourself, am I making this decision from scarcity or sufficiency? Am I shrinking to make others comfortable, or am I holding my ground? Am I chasing this opportunity out of fear, or am I evaluating it from alignment? And when you catch yourself operating from scarcity, don't judge it. Just interrupt it. Make a different choice. Reinforce the new identity. Over time, the wealth identity becomes automatic, and when it does, the wealth outcome becomes inevitable. Chapter 4. The Role of Belief Systems. Your beliefs are not neutral. They're not just thoughts floating around in your head. They're instructions, commands, directives that your brain follows without question. And if your belief system is incompatible with wealth, you will never create it, no matter how hard you work. Let's break this down. A belief is a thought you've repeated so many times that your brain now accepts it as fact. It might not be true, it might not serve you, but because you've reinforced it over and over, it's become part of your operating system. And your brain's job is not to question your beliefs. Your brain's job is to prove them right. So if you believe that making money is hard, your brain will find evidence that making money is hard. It will filter out the easy opportunities. It will amplify the difficult ones. It will interpret every setback as confirmation that you were right. If you believe that wealthy people are greedy or unethical, your brain will create internal resistance every time you try to increase your income. Because becoming wealthy would mean becoming the thing you've judged. If you believe that you're not smart enough, experienced enough, or credentialed enough to charge premium prices, your brain will stop you from even trying. It will flood you with imposter syndrome. It will convince you that you need more training, more proof, more validation before you're ready. This is not self-sabotage. This is your brain doing exactly what it's supposed to do, keeping you consistent with your belief system. And the scariest part, most of your beliefs are unconscious. You don't even know they're running the show. You think you're making rational decisions, but you're actually following unconscious scripts that were written years ago, maybe decades ago. Here's an example. You're pricing a new offer. You sit down to decide what to charge, and immediately, a number pops into your head. Let's say it's £500. You don't know where that number came from. It just feels right, so you go with it. But that number didn't come from a rational calculation of value. It came from your belief system. Maybe you believe that £500 is a lot of money. Maybe you believe that people in your niche don't pay more than that. Maybe you believe that you're not experienced enough to charge what the top people charge. Maybe you're unconsciously pricing yourself relative to what you used to earn per day in your corporate job. You don't question it. You just accept it. And you build an entire offer around a price point that was determined by a limiting belief. Now imagine someone else pricing the same offer, same skills, same value, same audience size, but their belief system is different. They believe that transformation is priceless. They believe that people who are serious will invest. They believe that their expertise is rare and valuable. They believe that charging more attracts better clients. They sit down to price the offer, and the number that pops into their head is £5,000. Same offer, different belief system, different outcome. And here's the critical part. Both people will find evidence that they're right. The person who charges £500 will attract price-sensitive buyers. They'll get objections about cost. They'll have to work harder to hit their revenue goals, and they'll use that as evidence that their pricing was correct, that people won't pay more. The person who charges £5,000 will attract committed buyers. They'll get fewer objections. They'll hit their revenue goals with fewer clients, and they'll use that as evidence that their pricing was correct, that the right people will always invest. Same market, different beliefs, different realities. So how do you change a belief system that's been running for years? First, you have to surface the belief. You have to make the unconscious conscious. Ask yourself, what do I believe about money? What do I believe about wealthy people? What do I believe about my own value? What do I believe about what's possible for someone like me? Write it down, all of it, even the uncomfortable parts, especially the uncomfortable parts. Then ask, is this belief true? Or is it just a story I've been telling myself? Most of the time, it's a story you inherited, a story you adopted to make sense of your circumstances, a story that served you once but doesn't serve you anymore. And once you see it as a story, you can choose a different one. Not through affirmations, not through positive thinking, but through evidence collection. You start looking for proof that the new belief is true. You start acting as if the new belief is true. You start making decisions based on the new belief, even when the old belief is screaming at you to stop. And over time, the new belief becomes the dominant one. Not because you convinced yourself, but because you proved it to yourself through action. This is the belief work that precedes wealth. It's not flashy, it's not motivational, but it's necessary, because you can learn every strategy in the world, but if your belief system is working against you, none of it will stick. Chapter 5. The Pattern of Enoughness. There's a pattern that shows up in people who build sustainable wealth. It's subtle. Most people don't notice it. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's the pattern of enoughness. Not complacency. Not settling. Enoughness. It's the ability to exist in the present moment without collapsing into lack or grasping for more. It's the capacity to hold I am enough and I want more at the same time without contradiction. Most people can't do this. They swing between two extremes. Either they're in scarcity mode, believing they're not enough, they don't have enough, they haven't done enough. They're constantly chasing the next milestone, the next achievement, the next external validation that will finally prove they're worthy. Or they're in avoidance mode, pretending they don't want more because wanting more feels greedy or materialistic or spiritually incorrect. They tell themselves they're content with less, but underneath there's resentment, frustration, a quiet sense of being left behind. Neither of these states creates wealth, because both are fear-based. The scarcity mode creates burnout. The avoidance mode creates stagnation. Enoughness is different. It's the ability to stand in your current reality without diminishing it and simultaneously move toward your vision without desperately needing it to validate you. It's the ability to say, I am enough exactly as I am, and I'm also committed to expanding into more. This is not a paradox. It's the foundation of sustainable wealth. Because when you operate from enoughness, you make different decisions. You don't take opportunities out of desperation. You don't say yes to clients who drain you because you're afraid to say no to money. You don't undercharge because you don't believe you're worth more. You also don't play small to avoid discomfort. You don't self-sabotage when things start working. You don't shrink when visibility increases. You stay grounded in your inherent worth while actively building toward your vision. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. Two people are building businesses. Both are early stage. Both are working hard. Both want to scale. The first person is operating from scarcity. They look at their current income and feel behind. They compare themselves to people further ahead and feel inadequate. They're constantly questioning whether they're doing enough, whether they're good enough, whether they'll ever get there. Every decision is made from that place of not enoughness. They launch an offer and immediately discount it because they don't believe people will pay full price. They land a client and over-deliver to the point of exhaustion because they're trying to prove their worth. They see someone else succeed and spiral into self-doubt. The second person is operating from enoughness. They look at their current income and see progress. They acknowledge where they are without making it mean anything about where they're going. They're clear on their vision, but they're not emotionally dependent on it happening right now. Every decision is made from sufficiency. They launch an offer and hold the price because they trust the value. They land a client and deliver exactly what was promised, no more, no less. They see someone else succeed and feel inspired, not threatened. Same external circumstances, completely different internal experience. And over time, the second person will outpace the first, not because they worked harder, but because they weren't bleeding energy into anxiety, comparison, and self-doubt. Enoughness is not passive. It's not complacent. It's not settling. It's the most powerful state you can operate from, because it removes the desperation, and desperation repels wealth. Think about it. When you're desperate, you chase, you grasp, you compromise your boundaries. You accept less than you deserve because you're afraid there won't be another opportunity. But when you're operating from enoughness, you attract, you evaluate, you hold your standards. You trust that the right opportunities will come because you're not frantically chasing the wrong ones. Wealth flows to people who don't need it to complete them, because those are the people who can hold it without collapsing under the weight of it. So how do you cultivate enoughness? You start by separating your worth from your results. Your worth is not determined by your income. It's not determined by your follower count. It's not determined by how many people said yes to your offer. Your worth is inherent. It exists independent of your achievements. This is hard for high achievers to accept, because we've been conditioned to believe that our value comes from what we produce, that we earn our place in the world through accomplishment. But that's a scarcity-based belief, and it will keep you on a hamster wheel forever. Enoughness is the decision to step off the wheel. to stop trying to earn your worth, to accept that you already have it. And from that place, you build, not to prove anything, not to fill a void, but because you want to, because it's aligned, because it's the next evolution of who you're becoming. That's when wealth becomes inevitable, because you're no longer chasing it from lack, you're creating it from sufficiency. Chapter 6. The Recalibration Process. Becoming someone new is not a single decision, it's a process. And the process is uncomfortable, because your current identity has been reinforced for years, maybe decades. It's wired into your nervous system. It's embedded in your habits. It's reflected in your environment, your relationships, your daily routines. And when you start to shift, everything resists. Your brain resists because change feels unsafe. Your body resists because new behaviors create physiological discomfort. Your environment resists because the people around you are used to the old version of you. This is the recalibration process, and most people quit here. They decide to build a business, and the first time it gets hard, they go back to applying for jobs. They decide to raise their prices, and the first time someone says no, they drop them again. They decide to show up more visibly, and the first time someone criticizes them, they retreat. Not because they're weak, but because the recalibration process is designed to test whether you're serious. Your brain is running a program that says, the old way is safe, the old way is known, the old way might not be great, but at least we survived it. And every time you try something new, your brain sounds the alarm. It floods you with doubt. It reminds you of every time you've failed before. It tells you that you're being reckless, naive, arrogant. This is not truth. This is protection. And the only way through is to expect it, to know that it's coming, to recognize it when it shows up and keep moving anyway. Let me walk you through what recalibration actually looks like. You decide you're going to stop undercharging. You set a new price that reflects the value of your work. It feels uncomfortable, but you commit to it. A potential client reaches out. You send them your pricing. They say it's too expensive. In that moment, every old pattern activates. The voice in your head says, "See, I told you no one would pay that. You're being unrealistic. Just lower the price so you don't lose them." This is the recalibration moment. If you drop the price, you reinforce the old identity. You prove to yourself that the scarcity belief was correct, and the next time, it will be even harder to hold your ground. But if you hold the boundary, if you say, "I understand this might not be the right fit for you right now, and that's okay," you reinforce the new identity. You prove to yourself that you can hold your value even when it's uncomfortable. And the next time, it's a little easier. Recalibration is the accumulation of these moments. It's not one big breakthrough. It's 1,000 small decisions to choose the new identity over the old one. It's the moment you don't check your bank account for the 3rd time today because you're trying to soothe your anxiety. It's the moment you don't discount your offer even though you're worried no one will buy. It's the moment you don't over-explain your expertise to justify your price. Each of these moments is a vote for the old identity or a vote for the new one, and whichever identity gets more votes wins. The recalibration process is also about environment, because your environment is constantly reinforcing your identity. If you're surrounded by people who talk about money like it's scarce, you will absorb that belief. If you're consuming content that glorifies hustle and burnout, you will internalize that as the path to success. If you're in spaces where people compete instead of collaborate, you will start to see the world as zero-sum. Your environment is either supporting your new identity or undermining it. There's no neutral, so part of the recalibration is curating your environment, unfollowing accounts that make you feel behind, stepping back from relationships that drain you, choosing media that reflects the identity you're building, not the one you're leaving behind. This doesn't mean you cut everyone off or build an echo chamber. It means you get intentional about what you're absorbing, because what you consume shapes what you believe, and what you believe shapes what you create. The recalibration process also requires patience, because the external world doesn't shift the moment your internal world does. You might step into a wealth identity today, but your bank account might not reflect it for weeks, months, maybe longer. This is where most people give up. They make the internal shift, and when the external reality doesn't immediately change, they assume it didn't work. They go back to the old identity because at least it's predictable. But wealth doesn't work on your timeline. It works on alignment, and alignment takes time. The people who are meant to work with you at your new price point haven't found you yet. The opportunities that match your new identity haven't emerged yet. The systems that support your new way of being haven't been built yet. But they will, if you stay consistent, if you keep choosing the new identity even when there's no evidence, if you trust the process even when it feels like nothing is happening, because the recalibration is happening beneath the surface long before it shows up in the results. Chapter 7. The identity of receiving. One of the most overlooked aspects of wealth is the ability to receive it. Most people think the hard part is making money, but making money is only half the equation. The other half is being able to hold it, to receive it, to let it stay. And most people can't. They make money and immediately spend it. They hit an income goal and immediately create a new expense. They receive abundance and immediately find a way to give it away. Not because they're bad with money, but because they don't have an identity that allows them to receive. Receiving is not passive. It's not about sitting back and waiting for things to happen. It's an active state of being. It's the capacity to let good things land without deflecting, minimizing, or sabotaging them. And if you grew up in an environment where receiving felt dangerous, uncomfortable, or conditional, you've likely developed patterns that block it. Here's what that looks like. Someone compliments your work and you immediately downplay it. Oh, it's nothing. I just threw it together. Someone offers to pay you what you're worth and you feel guilty, like you're taking advantage of them. So you throw in extras to make it feel fair. Someone wants to support you and you refuse, because accepting help feels like admitting you can't do it on your own. These are receiving blocks, and they don't just affect compliments and help, they affect money, because money is energy. And if you're blocking the flow of receiving in one area, you're blocking it everywhere. Let me give you an example. You launch an offer. Someone buys it at full price without hesitation. You feel a wave of guilt. Did I charge too much? Should I give them something extra to make sure they feel like they got their money's worth? So you over-deliver. You add bonuses. You extend the timeline. You make yourself available beyond what was agreed. You think you're being generous, but what you're actually doing is rejecting the abundance that just came to you. You're saying, I don't trust that what I offered was enough. I don't trust that I'm worth what they paid, so I need to compensate. And every time you do that, you reinforce the belief that you're not enough, that receiving money without overgiving is wrong, that wealth has to be earned through suffering, not through value. This is a receiving block, and it will cap your income no matter how hard you work, because you'll always find a way to give back what you receive. You'll always create a reason why you don't deserve to keep it. The identity of receiving is different. It's the ability to accept what comes to you without adding conditions. Someone pays you. You say thank you. You deliver what was promised. You don't add extras out of guilt. You don't apologize for the price. You don't question whether they're happy. You trust that they made a decision as an adult, and you honor that decision by not undermining it. Someone compliments you. You say thank you. You don't deflect. You don't minimize. You let it land. Someone offers help. You say yes. You don't refuse out of pride. You don't insist on doing everything alone. You let people support you. This is receiving, and it's a skill. It's a skill you have to practice, because for most people, it feels deeply uncomfortable. There's a vulnerability in receiving. It requires you to believe that you're worthy of good things without having to earn them through suffering. It requires you to trust that abundance is not a fluke, that it's not something you have to grip tightly or defend or justify. It requires you to relax into the knowing that you're allowed to have what you want. And for people who grew up in scarcity, that feels impossible, because scarcity teaches you that everything is conditional, that love is conditional, that safety is conditional, that resources are conditional. So you learn to earn everything, to prove your worth, to overgive so that people don't take things back. But that's not how wealth works. Wealth requires you to receive without conditions, to trust that what's yours will stay, to believe that you don't have to overfunction to deserve it. And the only way to build that capacity is to practice. Start small. Notice when you deflect compliments. Notice when you refuse help. Notice when you over-deliver out of guilt. And in those moments, pause, interrupt the pattern. Say thank you instead of deflecting. Accept the help instead of refusing. Deliver what was promised instead of adding more. It will feel uncomfortable. Your nervous system will protest. The old identity will tell you that you're being selfish, arrogant, lazy, but you're not. You're learning to receive. And receiving is the gateway to sustainable wealth, because you can make all the money in the world, but if you can't receive it, if you can't let it stay, if you can't trust that it's yours, you'll always give it back. The identity of receiving is the final piece. It's what allows you to not just create wealth, but to keep it, to expand it, to let it grow without sabotaging it. And it starts with the simple practice of letting good things land. Chapter 8. The compounding effect of identity. Here's what most people don't understand about identity work. It compounds. When you make a single decision from your new identity, it feels small, insignificant, like it doesn't matter. But when you make that decision consistently, day after day, week after week, month after month, it creates a compounding effect that eventually becomes undeniable. This is how identity-driven wealth is built. Not through one big break, not through a viral moment, not through luck, through the accumulation of identity-aligned decisions that compound over time. Let me show you what this looks like. You decide you're done undercharging. You set a new price. One person says yes. One person says no. It doesn't feel like a breakthrough. It feels like a regular Tuesday. But you hold the price. You don't drop it when the next person hesitates. You don't create a discount to make it easier for them to say yes. You trust the value and you hold the boundary. A month goes by. 2 people said yes at the new price. 3 people said no. You made the same amount of money you would have made at the old price with 5 clients. But now you only have 2 clients, which means you have more time, more energy, more capacity. You use that capacity to improve your offer, to create better systems, to show up more intentionally. Another month goes by. 3 people say yes. You're starting to attract a different type of client. People who value transformation over transaction. People who don't negotiate. People who respect your boundaries. You notice something shifting. You're not as anxious about money. You're not refreshing your bank account every day. You're not taking on projects that drain you just to hit a revenue goal. 6 months go by. You've served 12 clients at your new price instead of 30 clients at your old price. You made more money. You worked less. You enjoyed the work more. And you've reinforced a new identity. The identity of someone who doesn't compromise their value, who trusts their expertise, who attracts aligned opportunities. That identity now informs every other decision you make. You don't just hold your pricing, you hold your boundaries in every area of your business. You say no to partnerships that don't align. You walk away from opportunities that feel off. You invest in support because you trust that you're worth it. And those decisions compound. A year goes by. Your business looks completely different. Not because you had a viral moment, not because you got lucky, but because you made identity-aligned decisions consistently. And those decisions compounded into a new reality. This is the compounding effect of identity, and it's invisible in the beginning. When you're in the first few months of holding a new identity, it feels like nothing is changing. You're making different choices, but the external results look the same. You're doing the work, but the bank account hasn't shifted yet. This is where most people quit, because they don't see the compound interest building. But compound interest doesn't show up in the beginning, it shows up later, much later. Think about financial compound interest. If you invest £100 today, you won't see significant returns tomorrow, or next week, or even next month. But if you keep investing consistently, month after month, year after year, eventually the returns become exponential. Not because the amount you're investing changed, but because the compounding finally reached a tipping point. Identity works the same way. Every time you choose the new identity over the old one, you're making an investment, and in the beginning, it doesn't feel like much. One decision, one boundary, one moment of discomfort, but those decisions compound, and eventually they reach a tipping point where the new identity becomes automatic, where you don't have to think about it anymore, where it's just who you are. And when that happens, the external results start to shift, not because you're working harder, but because you're operating from a completely different foundation. Here's the critical part. You have to trust the compound before you see it. You have to keep making identity-aligned decisions even when there's no evidence that it's working. Even when the old identity is screaming at you to go back, even when it feels like you're the only one who believes in this version of yourself. Because the compounding is happening beneath the surface. It's happening in your nervous system, in your belief structures, in the way you show up, in the opportunities you notice, in the people you attract. And one day you'll look back and realize that everything changed, not because of one decision, but because of 1,000 small decisions that compounded into a new identity. That's the long game, and it's the only game worth playing. Because shortcuts don't compound, hacks don't compound, external validation doesn't compound, but identity does. Every single time. Chapter 9. Identity as Inevitable Outcome. Let's bring this full circle. Wealth is not something you chase. It's not something you force. It's not something you achieve through sheer willpower. Wealth is something you become. And once you become it, the outcome is inevitable. Not immediate, but inevitable. Because identity always precedes outcome. Always. You cannot out-strategy a scarcity identity. You cannot out-hustle an identity that doesn't believe in its own value. You cannot outwork an identity that's fundamentally incompatible with wealth. But when you do the identity work, when you shift the beliefs, interrupt the patterns, recalibrate the behaviors, cultivate enoughness, learn to receive, the outcome becomes inevitable. Not because you're forcing it, but because you've removed the internal blocks that were preventing it. Think about a river. Water flows downhill naturally. It doesn't have to try. It doesn't have to hustle. It just flows. But if there's a dam in the way, the water can't flow. It pools. It stagnates. It gets stuck. Most people are trying to force the water to flow while the dam is still there. They're working harder, adding more tactics, pushing more content, chasing more opportunities. But the dam is still there. The dam is the identity. And until you remove the dam, the water won't flow. The identity work is the process of removing the dam, of clearing the blocks, of creating the conditions for wealth to flow naturally. And when you do that, you don't have to force anything. You just become the person for whom wealth is natural, and the wealth follows. Let me tell you what this looks like in practice. You stop chasing opportunities and start evaluating them. You stop saying yes out of fear and start saying yes out of alignment. You stop undercharging to feel safe and start pricing based on value. You stop comparing yourself to others and start focusing on your own path. You stop waiting for permission and start giving it to yourself. You stop performing certainty and start embracing the uncertainty of growth. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable and start taking up space. You stop apologizing for your expertise and start owning it. You stop over-delivering to compensate for imposter syndrome and start trusting that you're enough. And as you do this, the external world starts to shift, not because you're doing more, but because you're being different. The right opportunities show up. The right people find you. The right clients say yes. The revenue increases. The business scales. Not because you forced it, but because you became the person for whom that outcome was inevitable. This is the promise of identity work. It's not motivational. It's not aspirational. It's mechanical. Change the identity, and the outcome changes every time. But you have to do the work. You have to be willing to sit in the discomfort of becoming someone new. You have to be willing to hold boundaries when it's scary. You have to be willing to trust the process when there's no evidence yet. And most importantly, you have to be willing to let go of the old identity, even the parts that feel safe, even the parts that got you here, because the identity that got you here will not get you there. You have to become someone new, and that's not easy, but it's necessary, and it's worth it. Because on the other side of the identity shift is a version of you that doesn't have to force, chase, or prove. A version of you that creates wealth naturally, that attracts aligned opportunities effortlessly, that holds boundaries without guilt, that receives without blocks. A version of you for whom wealth is not a goal, it's a byproduct. That's the inevitable outcome of identity work. And it's available to you right now, not someday, not when you're more qualified, not when you have more proof. Right now, all you have to do is decide that this is who you are, and then make every decision from that place. The outcome will follow. Conclusion: wealth is an identity before it is an outcome. This is the single most important thing you need to understand if you want to build sustainable, aligned, easeful wealth. You can learn every strategy. You can implement every tactic. You can work harder than everyone around you. But if your identity is rooted in scarcity, unworthiness, or not enoughness, you will sabotage every opportunity that comes your way. Because the identity always wins. It wins when you undercharge because you don't believe you're worth more. It wins when you over-deliver because you don't trust that you're enough. It wins when you say yes to opportunities that drain you because you're afraid to say no to money. And it will keep winning until you do the deeper work. The deeper work is not about tactics. It's about becoming. Becoming someone who believes in their inherent value. Someone who can hold boundaries without guilt. Someone who can receive abundance without sabotaging it. Someone who can exist in the gap between where they are and where they're going without collapsing into scarcity. That's the identity work, and it's the work that precedes every external result. This audiobook has given you the framework, the understanding of the identity outcome gap, the recognition of scarcity patterns, the practice of enoughness, the recalibration process, the identity of receiving, the compounding effect. But understanding is not enough. You have to apply it. You have to catch yourself in the act of scarcity-driven behavior and interrupt it. You have to make identity-aligned decisions even when they're uncomfortable. You have to trust the process even when there's no evidence yet. And you have to be patient because the identity shift happens before the external results, sometimes weeks before, sometimes months before, but it will happen if you stay consistent, if you keep choosing the new identity over the old one, if you trust that wealth is not something you chase, but something you become. The outcome is inevitable. Not immediate, but inevitable. So stop chasing the outcome. Start building the identity and watch what happens. Thank you for listening, and if this resonated, subscribe for more audiobooks on money, identity, and building a life that belongs to you. Please like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.